Another story developing this afternoon. Proceedings at SAFTU's elective conference stalling again. There's currently a stalemate over whether the 4 national office bearers who've been suspended can contest for leadership positions. The General Secretary of the biggest union in SAFTU, NUMSA, Ivan Jim, he's argued that the suspension of the leaders applies to their position only for their term of office, which has expired, and that nothing stops them from standing for election now in their membership as shop stewards remains in place. The General Secretaries and Presidents of the union affiliates are now locked in a meeting to discuss the constitutionality of allowing these officials to stand in the election. Our reporter Ziyanda Ngcobo joins us now. Ziyanda, good afternoon to you. There's clearly a fight here. There are clearly two different sides to this. Where does the balance of power lie?
You know, Stephen, they say in isiZulu that you can't have 2 bulls in one crawl. Basically, and that's basically what is happening here. It seems to be a contest and a fight between Irvin Jim and Zwelinzima Mabavi. So much so that we've seen several delays here at the start of today's proceedings. It started this morning, Stephen, protest with 2 and a half hours of debate over whether or not it would be constitutional to have these national office bearers now also form part of the nominations process. The IEC's official Moses Spitzer stood up and called out the names, and it included the names such as, suspended SAFTU President Mac Chabalala, Pakedi as well. And the argument there was that, look, yesterday's vote, which we also spent the entire time dealing with, Stephen, was actually to have them reinstated. Irvin Jim basically saying that whilst that motion failed, they were suspended for a previous term of office and not for this Congress, because this is an elective Congress, and so as shop stewards they have every right then to stand for re-election. A few moments ago, the acting president, Nomvume Kgalagala, tried to give the president's address. These workers behind me refused to have her actually continue with that address in the absence of the presidents and the general secretaries of the unions. They're currently locked in not a secret, but a closed-door meeting, I should say, to try and actually reach consensus in this regard so as to not further stall proceedings in this Congress, Stephen.
I mean, this is a huge division in a federation that is really very young. I mean, how serious does this look? I mean, could this conference collapse? If the conference collapses, what happens to the federation?
You know, in fact, I'm hoping perhaps then our colleagues can assist with that bite of Zwelinzima Mabavi, because he already touched on the issue of this conference possibly collapsing as a result of the butting of heads, really, of these unions. So on the one side, you have NUMSA, SAPU and FAU, who are really sponsoring this motion to have those 4 national office bearers, being allowed to stand for re-election. They're saying the motion yesterday has nothing to do with this elective Congress. And you have the other side led by Dadau and especially the General Secretary Vusinchangase arguing that the constitutionality of this needs to be tested. In fact, there was even a legal opinion, Stephen Curtis, given from Dalimpofu, and that was read out by Zwelinzima Mabavi. The workers here rejected that. Mpofu had in essence said those 4 national office bearers cannot participate, and this is where things actually got to a head. So tense were today's proceedings that one of the delegates here stood up and said, Ivan Jim thinks he owns us, and that was a moment where we saw tension, a lot of pointing of fingers, standing, Vavi unable really to control the meeting, telling the delegates to sit down. And there have been several of those moments, Stephen, and I'm hoping that bite is ready, where Vavi in essence says this conference has the potential to collapse.
That start was not what we would have expected from the Federation office of this caliber. The shouting matches and the return back to comrades standing in the chairs, something that we condemned without any hesitation. But since then, we went back to business of the conference. I think that we ended up a day of decent debates, of robust engagement between the comrades. and eventually they couldn't find one another, subjecting the matter to the vote. But that's now water under the bridge. We've got to move on today. We're going to be focusing on ensuring that the Congress is broken into commissions after the presidential address. And we hope that by this evening, we will emerge with something that will be about reviving the Federation SAFTU and putting it back to exactly where its members thought that it will go to after it was launched in 2017.
So, Stephen Curtis, that's Ziyanda Ngcobo earlier on, but I just want to show you just a bit of the vibrancy that's happening here. You're seeing NUMSA and SAPU delegates dancing and singing in front of the stage, and that's something that's been a recurrent feature of, this Congress. You'll see to the left Ziyanda Ngcobo sitting there, and it's almost as if they're trying to show him of their power. You can hear one of them saying,
we're strong, saying that never again so when you federation, so that's the federation, we can create one, another one, because this one was created by us. Our taking resolution, they're saying that we must build SAFTU. It's up to us. Then we're saying that today.
But why is this about a personality and not about the workers?
No, it's not about personality.
But you said if Vavi doesn't go, you will leave. Why aren't you putting the workers first?
Our principle is that all 4 NOPs that are suspended must come back as soon as possible. Thereafter, we can allow the process of voting. We are not going to vote if those NOPs are not coming back.
Are there other candidates you can choose?
No, we will never choose another candidate. These candidates are our rightful candidates.
All right, there you heard Stephen, very passionate, workers and delegates here saying that they want Ziyanda Ngcobo to go because he's stolen workers' money, and that's really been the allegation, this entire time, Stephen Curtis, that he's stolen workers' money, that he sold out, that he's actually trying to go back to COSATU and align with ANC leaders, that he's had secret meetings with ANC leaders. So NUMSA and SAPU remaining steadfast that unless those 4 national office bearers are allowed to contest as candidates in the nominations process, they will not be voting. In fact, they will walk out of this conference.
Ziyanda Ngcobo, thank you very much indeed. Our senior political reporter at that conference. Very important developments there will be